The rain came in sheets, hammering the cliffs with a force that made even the hardiest trees shiver. Lightning cut across the sky, revealing jagged rocks and a small hidden nest clinging to the edge of a sheer drop. Inside, a chorus of high-pitched cries echoed, tiny dragons, their scales slick with rain, huddled together in fear. Terran's heart raced. He had never seen anything like this. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but he couldn't leave them. Not now. A flash of silver caught his eye. One hatchling teetered dangerously close to the edge, wings too weak to hold it steady. Terran didn't hesitate. He sprinted across the slick stones, mud spraying from his boots. A deafening roar of wind and rain almost knocked him off balance, but he pressed forward, stretching out his arms to reach the trembling creature. The hatchling's eyes were wide, glowing faintly beneath translucent scales. They were unlike any animal he had seen, small, fragile, yet full of raw, untamed energy. It hissed and snapped at him instinctively, claws scraping his sleeve, but Terran didn't flinch. He whispered soothingly, letting his hand hover just above it until the creature's tension eased. Carefully he scooped it up, holding it close to his chest. The storm's fury pressed around him, but he felt a tiny heartbeat against his own, a reminder that his choice to act mattered. Suddenly, a massive shadow fell across the cliff. Terran froze. Rain blurred his vision, but the outline was unmistakable. An adult dragon, scales dark and glistening, wings folding like mountains. It watched him with eyes that seemed to pierce right through to his courage, or his foolishness. Every muscle in Terran's body tensed, but he refused to run. He had come too far, and fear could not guide his actions now. A crack of lightning struck a nearby rock, and the ground shuddered. The adult dragon moved slightly, its gaze never leaving Terran. He took a careful step forward, his free hand raised in peace. He noticed subtle movements in the dragon's body, tiny twitches of the wings and flickers of its tail. It wasn't attacking. It was observing. Terran's mind raced. He had to act smart or the hatchlings, and himself, would be crushed beneath the weight of nature's storm and dragon judgment. Terran lowered his voice and spoke softly, repeating the name of the hatchling as if it understood. The tiny creature shifted against his chest, still trembling but trusting him enough to stop wriggling. That small act, one hesitant movement, was a victory. Terran's pulse slowed slightly, a micro payoff that reminded him courage could win even in impossible odds. The storm roared louder. Mudslides threatened the narrow paths leading to the nest. Terran's boots slipped, forcing him to anchor himself against jagged stones. He scanned the cliffside for danger, spotting a loose boulder poised to crash toward the nest. Without thinking, he leaped forward, pushing the hatchling out of harm's way just as the rock tumbled down. Rain washed over him, stinging his eyes, but the hatchling chirped softly, nuzzling his shoulder. The bond had begun, fragile but undeniable. Lightning flashed again, revealing the nest fully. 4 more hatchlings huddled together, wings quivering, scales shimmering with faint colors in the stormlight. Their cries pierced Terran's ears, each note a plea for help he could not ignore. He edged closer, speaking softly, moving slowly so as not to alarm them. Every careful step mattered. One wrong move, and panic could send the entire nest plummeting. As he approached, the adult dragon's gaze shifted. Its head lowered slightly, wings flexing as if testing him. Terran felt the weight of their judgment, of every action having consequences beyond his imagination. He crouched near the nest, extending a hand, letting the hatchling see no threat. One of the smaller dragons took a tentative step toward him, eyes wide, scales glinting like wet jewels. Terran exhaled quietly, another small victory, a flicker of hope in the storm. Then, without warning, the ground trembled beneath him. A crack ran along the cliff's edge, splitting the stone with a sound like thunder. The hatchlings squealed, scattering in fear. Terran grabbed the nearest 2, holding them against his chest, and scrambled back toward a safer ledge. The storm was relentless, the dragons unpredictable, and the cliff ready to betray him at any second. He looked up and saw the adult dragon rise, wings unfurling, casting a shadow over the nest like a living mountain. Its roar mingled with the thunder, a sound both terrifying and awe-inspiring. Terran realized, with a jolt of fear and resolve, that he had only survived the first trial. The dragon's trust was fragile, the nest was unstable, and the storm had yet to show its worst. A sudden flash of lightning illuminated the cliff above. Another landslide was beginning to fall toward them. Terran's heart jumped. He tightened his hold on the hatchlings, scanning desperately for a way to safety. In that moment he knew one thing with certainty. Survival would require every ounce of courage, every spark of intelligence, and a connection with creatures that had feared all humans, until now. And then, through the roaring storm, a faint glow began to pulse from one of the hatchling's scales, mysterious and unexplainable. Terran's eyes widened. He had no idea what it meant, but he knew the answers and the danger were only beginning to reveal themselves. The cliff trembled again beneath a sudden crack, sending dust and debris into the storm. Terran's breath caught. One wrong move could end everything. The hatchling stirred, sensing the change. And in that instant he realized, the storm was not his only enemy. Something far stranger and far more powerful was watching, and waiting, for him to make the next move. The wind screamed louder now, tearing at Terran's soaked clothes and whipping the rain into his face. He hugged the two hatchlings closer, their tiny bodies shivering against him. The cliff beneath his boots felt unstable, slick with mud and water. One wrong step and they could all fall. Above him, the adult dragon hovered, wings spread like a living storm cloud, its eyes locked onto him with a weight that made his chest tighten. Terran took a slow, steadying breath. Panic would get him nowhere. He scanned the cliff, looking for a safer ledge, a handhold, anything solid. Rocks jutted out here and there, but the path was treacherous. One small miscalculation could send him and the hatchlings plummeting into the storm-swept chasm below. A loud crack split the air. A boulder loosened higher up and began tumbling down toward the nest. Terran didn't hesitate. He sprinted, sliding across wet stone, dragging the hatchlings with him. They squealed in fear, wings flapping helplessly. He lunged just in time to roll out of the boulder's path, the rock smashing into the cliffside behind him with a thunderous crash. Heart hammering, he realized this storm was more dangerous than he had imagined. The adult dragon landed with a ground-shaking thud. Its eyes narrowed, wings folding but still tense, ready to strike at any moment. Terran froze, instinct telling him that one wrong gesture could provoke it. Yet something curious flickered in the dragon's gaze, watchfulness, almost respect. It wasn't attacking. It was testing him. He remembered the tiny hatchling on his shoulder, its glowing scales pulsing faintly against the dark storm. A thought struck him, maybe the hatchling's fear was connected to the adult. Maybe he needed to prove he wasn't a threat, not just to the babies but to their guardian. Terran spoke softly, murmuring the hatchlings' names, letting the sound carry gently through the wind. The tiny dragons tilted their heads, listening. One even stepped toward him, wings trembling but unafraid. Lightning flashed, revealing the cliff edge. Another hatchling teetered near the abyss, its tiny claws digging into loose rock. Terran's mind raced. He had to act quickly. He edged forward carefully, one step at a time, his wet fingers gripping jagged stone for balance. With a gentle voice, he coaxed the hatchling toward him. It hesitated, claws scraping the mud, eyes wide with terror. Terran held his breath, slowly extending his hand. The hatchling jumped into his palm, trusting him despite the chaos. A small, victorious smile crossed his face. One hatchling safe, one step closer to building trust. But there was no time to linger. The storm wasn't finished. Water roared down the cliff in rivulets, threatening to wash them all away. Terran spotted a small crevice in the cliff ahead, a place where the hatchlings could cling until the worst of the rain passed. He scrambled toward it, shifting the hatchlings carefully to avoid startling them. The adult dragon moved closer, wings flexing with a low hiss of sound. Terran's stomach tightened. It was massive, more than 10 times his size, and its gaze held centuries of instinctive wariness. Terran spoke again, keeping his voice low, steady, almost melodic, hoping to convey calm rather than fear. He edged closer to the crevice, glancing back to see if the adult was following, or waiting for a mistake. The cliff shuddered suddenly. Terran stumbled, dropping one hatchling. He snatched it midair, heart racing, adrenaline surging. The tiny dragon chirped in surprise but didn't wriggle away. Terran exhaled slowly, realizing that the creature trusted him enough to stay still, even when the world was collapsing around them. Another small victory, but the stakes were rising. Above them, the adult dragon spread its wings, a low rumble echoing through the storm. Terran felt the vibration through the rocks beneath him. It wasn't attacking, but the sheer presence of it forced him to move carefully, calculating every step. One wrong motion, one moment of hesitation could be fatal. He tightened his grip on the hatchlings and crawled toward the crevice, using his free hand to anchor himself to a jagged outcrop. Suddenly, something moved in the shadows near the nest. Terran squinted through the rain and mud. Another creature? Or was it just a trick of the stormlight? He couldn't tell, and hesitation could cost him everything. Thinking fast, he held the hatchlings close and shifted slightly to shield them, preparing to react. The movement caught the creature's attention. A second later, a flash of silver scales revealed a smaller dragon, injured and trembling at the nest's edge. Terran's heart clenched. There was no time to wonder why. He needed to help, and quickly. He edged toward the injured hatchling, speaking softly, extending a hand. The tiny dragon hissed in fear, its wings fluttering weakly. Terran crouched low, inching closer, until finally the hatchling crawled into his palm, wings trembling but safe. He breathed out, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over him. Saving one hatchling had already tested him, but now he had 3, and the storm showed no sign of stopping. The adult dragon let out a low roar, wings snapping open, creating a blast of wind that nearly knocked Terran off his feet. He froze, expecting an attack. But instead, the dragon slowly lowered its massive head, eyes fixed on him, almost studying him. Terran realized it wasn't aggression, yet. It was observing, judging, weighing his courage and intelligence. He met its gaze, keeping his voice calm, letting the hatchlings feel his confidence. Lightning struck nearby, illuminating the cliff in stark, harsh light. Dust and rock tumbled down toward the nest. Terran's stomach dropped, and he tightened his hold on the hatchlings, scanning for the safest path to solid ground. Every step, every breath mattered. He knew one wrong move could undo all the progress he had made. And then, through the roar of wind and rain, he noticed it, one hatchling's scales glimmering brighter than the others, a faint, pulsing light that seemed almost alive. Terran's eyes widened. He had no idea what it meant. Was it danger or something more? The storm was no longer his only concern. The cliff trembled again, louder this time, sending loose rock clattering toward him. Terran's heart leapt. The adult dragon flared its wings, shadowing the nest completely. He hugged the hatchlings tight and took a deep breath, knowing he had to move, or everything could be lost. And in that instant he realized, survival would demand more than courage. It would demand understanding, trust, and a connection with creatures that had feared all humans, until now. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the cliff was still slick and treacherous, mud clinging to Terran's boots and hands. The hatchlings chirped softly, huddled close to him, their glowing scales casting faint, shifting lights across the wet rocks. Terran's chest ached from exhaustion, but he knew they couldn't stay here. The storm might have passed, but the dangers of the cliff and the adult dragon's watchful gaze were far from over. Terran scanned the area, looking for something solid, a place to rest safely. That's when he noticed it, a small opening beneath the nest, partially hidden by a jumble of jagged rocks. It was barely wide enough for him to squeeze through, but it offered shelter, and something else. The faint pulsing glow from deeper inside suggested something alive. Curiosity gnawed at him, stronger than fear. He had come too far to ignore it. He shifted the hatchlings carefully into a small sack he had tied across his chest, keeping them secure. One at a time he inched into the narrow crevice. The walls were wet and slick, forcing him to use both hands and feet to crawl forward. Water dripped from above, hitting him in the face. Every step mattered. One misstep and he could crush the hatchlings or get trapped. The opening widened gradually, leading to a hidden chamber beneath the nest. Terran froze. The room was filled with crystalline eggs, glowing faintly in colors that shifted like liquid light. Some were blue, some green, others golden, each casting eerie reflections on the wet rock walls. The glow pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Terran's eyes widened. He had never seen anything like this. The hatchlings inside the sack stirred nervously. Terran whispered to them, careful not to alarm them further. He crouched low, examining the eggs. Their glow seemed alive, almost sentient. He reached out carefully to touch one. The surface was cool, smooth, and slightly warm underneath, as if it were breathing. His mind raced. What kind of creatures are these? Why do their eggs glow? A sudden tremor shook the chamber. Dust and small rocks fell from the ceiling. Terran tightened his grip on the sack and braced himself. Then he heard it, a soft, low hiss behind him. He turned slowly, heart pounding, expecting the adult dragon. Instead, he saw another shadow, a smaller dragon, injured and weak, pressed against the wall. Its scales were dull, one wing bent at an odd angle. Terran's chest clenched. He couldn't leave it here. He knelt, speaking softly, coaxing the creature toward him. It hesitated, eyes wary, but hunger and desperation won over fear. Terran extended a hand, and after tense moments, the dragon leaned into his touch. His heart lifted. Every act of trust, every careful decision was paying off. He had no time to wonder how or why yet. Survival was still the first priority. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed from above. The cliff shifted again, dislodging a chunk of rock. Terran felt the tremor through the stone beneath him. He knew the adult dragon was still circling, still watching, still testing. His choices had consequences. One wrong move and the entire nest, including the glowing eggs, could tumble down into the storm-churned ravine below. He acted quickly. Using nearby rocks and vines from the nest above, he constructed a crude brace to stabilize the fragile eggs, holding them steady while minimizing contact. Sweat dripped down his face, mixing with rainwater, but he didn't stop. Every motion mattered. One shaky egg could spell disaster, and one scared hatchling could trigger panic. The injured smaller dragon stepped closer, nuzzling his hand. Terran's chest swelled with a strange mixture of relief and determination. He realized the adult dragon wasn't just a guardian, it was a judge. It was testing him to see if he could handle more than just instinct, more than just courage. He needed intelligence, empathy, and careful planning. The bond with the hatchlings and the injured dragon was proof that humans could rise above fear, even in the face of creatures that had never trusted them. Terran heard a faint rumble above. The adult dragon flared its wings suddenly, causing a blast of wind that rocked the chamber. The glowing eggs shifted slightly, vibrating in response. He grabbed a loose rock and held it in front of the hatchlings like a shield, keeping them pressed close. The adult dragon didn't attack. It hovered, evaluating, waiting. Terran realized the creature's intentions were unknowable, and yet he had to act decisively. Hesitation could cost him and the hatchlings everything. Lightning flashed outside the crevice, illuminating a shadow that moved across the walls. Another landslide had begun higher up. Terran's mind raced. He had to get the hatchlings and the injured dragon out before the rockfall reached the nest. But the path back was treacherous, unstable, slick with mud and water. He needed a plan fast. He scanned the chamber, noticing a series of natural ledges and narrow gaps leading upward. It was risky but possible. Terran whispered to the hatchlings, urging them to stay calm. One by one, he positioned them carefully, balancing their weight against his own as he climbed toward the opening. The injured dragon followed, hopping on its remaining leg, leaning into his guidance. A sudden crack split the cliffside. Dust and pebbles rained down, and a massive boulder tumbled perilously close to the chamber entrance. Terran froze for a heartbeat, then acted. He shoved the hatchlings behind a protruding rock just as the boulder smashed past, narrowly missing them. His chest heaved as adrenaline surged. Another small victory, but the storm and the adult dragon's watchful eyes meant the real test was far from over. Terran climbed out of the crevice, gripping each hatchling, guiding the injured dragon with care. The adult dragon watched silently from above, wings folded but tense, eyes glittering with intelligence. Terran realized he had passed one trial, but the mysteries of the glowing eggs, the strange behavior of the adult dragon, and the dangers still waiting on the cliff meant the adventure had only just begun. Then, from the corner of his eye, he noticed a faint shimmer along the horizon, a strange glow beyond the storm, pulsating like the eggs below. His pulse quickened. Whatever lay ahead, it was bigger than he had imagined. And now he had to decide: follow the path of safety with the hatchlings, or take the risk to uncover the truth behind this hidden dragon world. Terran's hands tightened on the hatchlings. He swallowed hard. He had no idea what waited next, but he knew he couldn't turn back. And somewhere in the storm-dark sky, the adult dragon shifted, wings stretching as if silently daring him to take the next step. The question burned in his mind: what was the secret of the glowing eggs, and why had the adult dragon brought him here? Terran's heart pounded as he clutched the hatchlings and guided the injured dragon across the narrow ledges. The storm had faded into a persistent drizzle, but the cliff was far from safe. Loose rocks tumbled beneath his boots, and every step threatened to send him and the dragons plummeting into the churning river far below. Above, the adult dragon hovered, wings spread wide like living thunderclouds, eyes sharp, calculating, testing him at every move. He reached a narrow ledge barely wide enough to hold himself. The hatchlings chirped anxiously in his chest, their small bodies trembling. The injured dragon leaned weakly against him, wings dragging. Terran's stomach tightened. One wrong step, one slip, and everything would be lost. But he couldn't hesitate. Hesitation could kill them all. Ahead, a jagged path led upward to a safer ledge. It was risky, with crumbling stone and wet, slippery surfaces. Terran studied it quickly, weighing his options. Then he noticed a vine twisted around a rock protrusion, thick and strong enough to act as a rope. A plan formed in his mind. Carefully, he anchored the vine to the rock and tested its strength with his weight. It held. He took a deep breath, chest tight with adrenaline, and signaled to the hatchlings. Step by careful step, he guided them along the ledge, swinging them gently over gaps with the vine. The injured dragon followed, hopping as best it could, leaning into Terran's steadying hands. The adult dragon shifted above, wings flaring, creating a blast of wind that threatened to knock them off balance. Terran gritted his teeth and adjusted his stance, using the boulder-studded wall for support. Every movement had a purpose. Every second counted. A sudden rumble echoed through the cliff. Dust and pebbles showered down, and a massive chunk of stone broke free above. Terran lunged forward, pushing the hatchlings behind him just as the rock smashed into the ledge. He stumbled, nearly losing his balance, but the injured dragon clung to his arm. Relief surged briefly, but there was no time to celebrate. The cliff continued to crumble, and the adult dragon's gaze followed every motion, unblinking. Terran pressed onward. Another obstacle loomed, a gap too wide to jump. He looked down. The drop was dizzying. The hatchlings chirped nervously, sensing the danger. His mind raced. He remembered the vines, the twisted rope he had tested earlier. Anchoring it to a rock protrusion, he fashioned a makeshift swing. First, he sent the smallest hatchling across, holding it in his hands and swinging carefully. The hatchling's claws clung to him instinctively. It landed safely, chirping in relief. Terran felt a small, victorious pulse of emotion. One step closer. The adult dragon let out a low roar, wings snapping open, creating a gust that nearly threw Terran off balance. He hugged the hatchlings to his chest and leaned into the cliff, bracing against the wind. The injured dragon struggled, but he whispered encouragement, holding it close. Every act of trust mattered. Every moment of courage counted. Another flash of lightning revealed the final stretch of ledge leading to relative safety. It was narrow and uneven, but solid. Terran's chest ached with exertion, his arms trembling, but he knew he had to make it. Carefully he edged forward, placing each foot deliberately, shifting weight slowly to avoid dislodging rocks. The hatchlings pressed against him, their soft chirps blending with the storm's fading roar. Suddenly the cliff beneath him groaned ominously. A deep crack ran along the ledge, splitting it in half. Terran froze. The adult dragon's eyes narrowed, wings flexing with tension. It was a test. Terran could feel it. There was no room for error. His hands clutched the rocks, muscles straining. Slowly, deliberately, he shifted the hatchlings, moving them one by one to the safer section of the ledge. Each small success brought a heartbeat of relief, but the danger was far from over. Lightning illuminated a horrifying sight. Another boulder, larger than before, dislodged and began to roll toward them. Terran's mind worked in a blur. He grabbed a smaller rock and hurled it at the boulder's edge, redirecting it slightly. It tumbled past, grazing the ledge but missing them. A small, clever victory, a moment of triumph earned through human ingenuity. The hatchlings chirped in response, instinctively sensing safety for the first time. The adult dragon's roar shook the air, wings snapping open in a dramatic display. Terran froze, chest tight with tension. He had expected aggression, but instead, the dragon lowered its head slowly, wings folding slightly, eyes watching him closely. It was no longer just a test. There was acknowledgement, respect, perhaps even approval. Terran's chest swelled with a mix of relief and awe. He had faced the impossible, acted with courage and intelligence, and won a fragile trust. But there was no time to savor victory. The cliff trembled again. Above them, a new shadow moved, larger, faster, and darker than the adult dragon. Terran's stomach dropped. He had survived one trial, earned trust, and saved the hatchlings, but a far greater threat loomed on the horizon. His heart pounded with fear and excitement. The real challenge was still ahead. Terran held the hatchlings tightly, looking up at the massive shadow against the storm-dark sky. He realized something important. Survival required more than bravery. It required understanding, connection, and quick thinking. Every choice had consequences, and he had just begun to understand the depth of this dragon world. A faint glow flickered from one of the hatchlings, pulsing steadily, like a heartbeat of its own. Terran's eyes widened. He didn't know what it meant, but instinct told him it was important. He hugged the hatchlings closer and took a deep breath, ready for whatever came next. The adult dragon shifted again, wings stretching, casting a shadow over the ledge. Its eyes locked with Terran's, silent but unyielding. The cliff quivered beneath a distant rumble, and the hatchlings stirred nervously. Terran's mind raced. One step, one decision, one clever action. Everything mattered. He had proven his courage, his intelligence, and his compassion. But the story was far from over. Something bigger, more mysterious, and far more dangerous was coming. Terran's pulse quickened. He knew he had to face it head-on. And in the corner of his eye, the pulsing glow of the hatchlings hinted at a secret that could change everything. The wind gusted again, louder this time. The cliff shook violently. Terran's grip tightened. One wrong move now could undo all he had accomplished. And then, from the shadows beyond the storm, a faint glimmer appeared, something enormous, moving with purpose, watching him and the hatchlings. Terran's breath caught. He realized that courage alone would not be enough. He needed every ounce of wit, every spark of determination, and every bond he had formed with these dragons. The true test was about to begin, and there was no turning back. Terran's heart hammered in his chest as the massive shadow advanced, cutting through the thinning drizzle. The shape was enormous, bigger than any dragon he had ever imagined, scales glinting like molten metal, wings slicing through the wind with frightening power. The adult dragon that had been his silent judge hovered protectively over the hatchlings, its eyes flashing with recognition and challenge. Terran's pulse raced. The moment of truth had arrived. He hugged the hatchlings tighter, feeling their tiny bodies shiver against him. Their pulsing scales glowed brighter now, almost synchronizing with the massive creature's movements. Terran didn't know why, but instinct told him the light was a signal, a call, a warning, or perhaps a key to survival. Every instinct in his body screamed to run, but he couldn't. He had come too far, and the dragons trusted him. Courage wasn't optional anymore, it was necessary. The enormous dragon let out a roar that shook the cliffside. Rocks loosened and tumbled, dust filled the air, and the hatchlings squealed. Terran dropped to a crouch, shielding them with his body. The adult dragon beside him flared its wings in response, creating a protective gust that partially blocked the incoming threat. Terran realized the adult wasn't attacking. It was testing him further, gauging his resolve, his intelligence, and his connection to the hatchlings. Lightning streaked across the sky, revealing the creature's eyes, deep, intelligent, and ancient. Terran's mind raced. He couldn't fight it, he was human, vulnerable, and unarmed. But he could act. He scanned the ledge, searching for anything to use, any opportunity to turn this impossible situation into a chance. Then he noticed a narrow crevice in the cliff wall behind the massive dragon. If he could lure the creature toward it, perhaps he could create a path for the hatchlings to escape. He exhaled slowly, trying to steady his shaking hands. "Come on," he whispered to the hatchlings, "we can do this." The tiny dragons chirped, their glowing scales pulsing urgently. Terran edged forward, holding the hatchling securely while keeping his eyes on the massive dragon. One false move and the ledge could crumble beneath them. The enormous dragon advanced, wings flaring, casting massive shadows. Terran took a calculated risk. He lifted one of the hatchlings slightly, allowing its glow to beam directly at the creature. The light pulsed like a beacon, and to his surprise, the massive dragon paused, tilting its head curiously. Terran's heart leapt. The bond he had begun forming with the hatchlings might be the key. He moved slowly, deliberately, keeping the glow between him and the giant. The creature shifted, following the light with cautious steps. Terran whispered softly to the hatchlings, encouraging them to keep their light steady. Inch by inch, he led the creature toward the crevice, using the hatchling's natural glow as a lure. The adult dragon watched silently, wings flexing as if acknowledging his cleverness. Then came the test. A boulder loosened above them, threatening to crush the hatchlings and Terran. He reacted instantly, shielding the smallest hatchling with his body and pushing the others aside. The boulder crashed past, missing them by inches, and the massive dragon froze, watching the humans' courage and selflessness in action. Terran felt a surge of pride. He had earned their trust not just through cleverness, but through unwavering bravery. With careful precision, he guided the hatchlings and the injured dragon into the crevice behind the massive creature. Terran pressed close to the wall, heart racing, as the enormous dragon leaned over the cliff's edge, sniffing, observing. Then, to his astonishment, it reared back and let out a low, approving rumble. The stormlight glinted off its scales as it spread its wings and ascended, vanishing into the clouds. The threat had passed for now. Terran slumped against the wall, chest heaving, feeling the hatchlings stir in relief. They chirped softly, wings fluttering, their glow slowly dimming to a calm pulse. The injured dragon nuzzled his shoulder, and he smiled, brushing mud and rain from their scales. He had done it. He had faced impossible odds, navigated collapsing cliffs, and earned the trust of creatures that had feared all humans. The adult dragon beside him nudged the hatchlings, a protective gesture, then regarded Terran with something almost human in its gaze, recognition. Terran realized the creatures weren't just animals. They were intelligent, sentient and capable of understanding courage, compassion, and determination. His heart swelled. Humans, he thought, can shine even in worlds designed to test them. The cliffside was quiet now, only the soft drip of rain and the gentle hum of the glowing hatchlings. Terran allowed himself a moment to breathe, to marvel at the lives he had saved and the fragile trust he had built. He glanced toward the horizon, where faint glimmers of light shimmered beyond the storm. Questions churned in his mind. What was the source of the hatchlings' glow? Why had the massive dragon appeared now, and what mysteries lay ahead in this hidden world? He hugged the hatchlings tighter, determination settling in his chest. Whatever dangers awaited, he would face them. He had learned courage, intelligence, and empathy could bend even the wildest, most feared creatures to trust. And now he had a new mission: protect these dragons, uncover their secrets, and navigate a world that had never imagined a human could rise to meet its challenges. The injured hatchling blinked at him, eyes gleaming faintly. Its glow pulsed in rhythm with the others. Terran felt a spark of understanding, a hint of something larger, something beyond even this cliffside. He whispered softly, "We'll find out together." The hatchlings chirped, and the bond felt complete, fragile but unbreakable. Then from the clouds above, a shadow moved again. Not the massive dragon this time, but something else, bigger, faster, and darker. A faint, otherworldly hum carried through the air. Terran's pulse quickened. He had survived the cliff, earned trust, and uncovered the first layer of this dragon world. But the true adventure, the ultimate test of courage and human ingenuity, was just beginning. He looked at the glowing hatchlings, the injured dragon leaning on him, and felt a surge of determination. The cliff had tested him. The dragons had judged him. And now he knew humans could shine even in the face of the unknown. With a deep breath, Terran whispered, "Let's see what comes next." The horizon glimmered, hinting at mysteries untold, and the sky rumbled softly as if inviting him onward. The story was far from over. The dragons, the glowing eggs, and whatever lay beyond the storm, Terran's journey had only just begun.